for coming along to the webinar this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you are. The webinar is titled Optimizing Production Storage for High-End Documentary Production. That's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm David Fox, waving, from Archiware. I'm in the UK, and with me for this webinar, we've got two other people. We've got Maarten from Limecraft, CEO and founder of Limecraft. Hi, Maarten.
Hi there.
Good to have you here. Maarten's going to tell us all about the Limecraft product in a minute. And we've got Olivier from Hotel Hungaria. He's CTO of head of post-production over there. So, hi, Olivier. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, David. Hi, everybody.
Hi. Olivier's got lots of interesting stuff to tell us about how he uses these products together. So before we kick off, we've got 45 minutes of webinar for you, and we're allowing 5 to 10 minutes at the end for questions. But if you've got lots of questions for us, great. We'll stick around. We'll miss our evening meals. We'll answer your questions. So ask hundreds of questions if you want. GoToWebinar has a questions box. So we just want you to type your questions in there, either at the end or during the webinar. Either's fine, and we'll go through all of those at the end of the webinar. We're going to record the session. We had an earlier session. One of the two will go out on the YouTube link, and we'll send you a link to it, plus a slide deck, everything else, so you don't need to write anything down. So the content of this webinar is on this slide. So we're going to begin with an overview of the Limecraft platform, followed by me telling you about Archiware P5, just the basic facts in case you're not familiar. And then we'll go into looking at this sort of case study on how and why Hotel Hungaria integrated Limecraft with Scale Logic storage and Archiware P5 and LTO archive cold storage. And then we'll wrap everything up. We'll take your questions. So I hope that sounds like a good plan for the next 40 minutes or so. I'm just going to come in here and turn my camera off because you don't want to look at us for the whole thing. You're better off concentrating on the slides. So let me just go full screen again here. And let's kick off with Maarten and an overview of the Limecraft platform, and you're going to tell me when to advance the slides, Maarten, and I'll do that.
Yeah, thank you very much, David, and thanks to all the attendants for joining us this morning or tonight in continental Europe. So for those who've never come across Limecraft, it's a native cloud-native asset management stack. Production asset management, media asset management, whatever asset management, used by producers, mostly television content. It's not live, but we can handle documentary, fiction, unscripted reality, and we have a couple of news agencies among our customers. All of these, without exception, are faced with challenges in the area of scalability. Finding out that it's becoming increasingly difficult to swallow all the raw material delivered on the incoming side, and to create all those masters and deliverables on the outgoing side. Sometimes it's a matter of speed and indexing using AI. In the case of what we're talking about here today, high-end, high-volume production like documentaries, projects, or continuous drama, it's brutal. It's about how to handle petabytes of content, usually on local storage. The cost of putting that in the cloud would be prohibitive. And when you put it on local storage, the next question is then how you make it accessible to your remote editors and people abroad. And Hotel Hungaria managed to integrate it in a way, hybrid storage. So it's Scale Logic online storage with cold storage next to it, managing several petabytes of content, putting Limecraft on top, which, so to speak, puts a secure layer on top of all that technology, allowing them to find the optimum between cost and performance. And if we go to the next slide, David, it's a more general problem where US producers need to produce more content faster, you need to output it globally. Some of our customers operate in London with post-production, but they get rushes from all over the world. More and more video formats become bigger, and content needs to be personalized, and that commands automation, that commands a more agile approach, combination of local storage for performance where it must be, combined with cloud-based convenience where it can. It has to be secure, and with or without knowing it, there is a lot of AI under the water surface, allowing to automate the intake of material and taking baby steps into auto editing. In general, Limecraft strives to get rid of manual work. Audio sync, logging, the only way to ingest 1,000 hours of raw material per month is to highly automate the intake, giving back time for creative storytelling, freeing up edit base, and that is not for convenience, that's a must-have for high volume producers. So on the next slide, there's a schematic of how it looks like. We'll look at a couple of screenshots in a minute, really. Limecraft's core expertise is not in developing AI or selling storage. At the contrary, our expertise is in the user interface and understanding the workflow, and making all those technologies available in a single coherent user experience. So we connect to tapes and online storage, nearline storage, cloud storage as necessary, and we connect with as much AI vendors as possible. We integrate with Avid, Resolve, Premiere, so that people don't need to copy and paste and don't need to manage exports, etc. Looking at the more specific case of Hotel Hungaria's wildlife production, the majority of the content is shot in Sony XOCN format at a rate of 650 megabit per second over a period of multiple years, creating a total of 1.5 petabyte before they started cutting. So hence the scalability problem, and not just the brutal storage of the files, also finding the needle in the haystack. Thousands of files that have been produced. The challenge is how to find the right pieces of material for the editing, and that's what Limecraft is all about. We've got a screenshot on the next slide if you want, David. Here is a typical look, and you might sense the simplicity of the user interface. We've tried to cut down the complexity as much as possible, yet like in the example of this wildlife project, in other cases we could use speech-to-text transcription, or for news agencies we often use face recognition to make content searchable. In this wildlife project we had to integrate animal detection, and if you're looking for gazelle, if you click to the next slide, it will return all the images possibly containing gazelle with a reasonable error rate. 10% of the images will be false positive, but overall it's a huge help for edit producers, and that's what Limecraft is about. We don't want to be editors to be too deeply concerned about technology. It just needs to work, and we package those technologies in a single user interface. More importantly, if we can switch to the next slide, David, at any point in time, as Olivier will explain, the main storage is on cold storage. When you're dealing with super high volume, you don't want to have it stored online. The majority of the stock is kept alive on tape, and these producers don't need tape operators or archivists to store it from on tape. It's just built in the user interface. And if we go one step further, David, with a single click of the button, storyboards and pre-cuts, sync pools, whatever is the name, with the applicable metadata, comments, sound bites, production metadata, can be exported to the timeline of any editor of choice. Image on the next slide, David. And then we will make sure that all the applicable metadata travels along with the media, is put as markers on the timeline, so that also the editor can benefit from all the preparatory work and the metadata we've harvested along the production process. So just to wrap up, if we switch to the next slide, David, Limecraft is all about allowing you to create a more compelling story. We talked about a single collaborative user interface and workspace. It copes with all file formats without having to bother with transcoding technology. It hides the underlying complexity of usually hybrid storage environments with 3 or 4 storage technologies, where content is automatically migrated in the background from one storage node to another one. There is a lot of artificial intelligence, but what Limecraft puts on top is that all these, I would say, AI aspects, speech to text, face recognition, image recognition, are boiled down to a single timeline, so that you as an edit producer can ask advanced queries and combine different terms in one search. And then seamless multi-vendor access refers to the ability to integrate with Microsoft Active Directory, as well as Avid Central UX, Media Composer, Adobe, the full stack. In all of that, instruments to improve the job of professionals, not to make them redundant. And I think we've got one more slide for the Limecraft part, David. The business case and how we think about sustainability. When we look at the particular project of this wildlife project by Hotel Hungaria, shooting 1.5 peta over a period of 3 years. If they store it on LTO8 tape on HP hardware using Archiware as a middleware layer, the cost per terabyte boils down to €10 per terabyte. If they would have chosen to store it all on Scale Logic or a similar online service at the unit price of €120 per terabyte, just for this project, ladies and gentlemen, they're realizing a direct saving of €100,000. And looking at the whole, that's 30% saving, making intelligent use of tape versus putting it all online. Now, we're not in the business of making online storage redundant. At the contrary, the key message here is when you succeed in balancing cold storage and online storage, making sure content is directly accessible for online editing. At the same time, it's stored on cold storage for volume optimized preservation. That's a big thing when we scale to larger operations. And by the way, this project only saves 10 kilowatt per hour, 10 kilowatt hour on a daily basis. In total, 3,650 kilowatt hour per year, which, at least in Europe, would be a small to mid-size household power consumption. So every project has the potential to save electricity worth of one household. And one last aspect, there's a deliberate choice of all involved parties to give the customer, Hotel Hungaria in this case, a feeling of comfort by avoiding vendor lock-in. Because Limecraft is the piece of software that orchestrates the storage. Hotel Hungaria becomes independent of Nexus, Isilon, Scale Logic, and Archiware. And reversely, as Olivier will explain in a couple of minutes, by making sure whatever is stored on Scale Logic and Archiware is human readable by a proper folder structure, Hotel Hungaria at the same time, in principle, becomes independent from Limecraft. No one has the intention to to sack Limecraft or Scale Logic or Archiware, but it becomes more scalable, more independent, more solid, which gives them the comfort to manage their architecture more closely. There is more data and evidence and data points on the customer case on our website mentioned over there. And on that note, I'm giving the floor to David.
Thanks very much, Maarten. So with that, we'll come back to the Limecraft product and how it's actually used by Hotel Hungaria in a minute. But before that, I just want to give those in the audience that are not necessarily entirely familiar with Archiware P5 a quick overview. So Archiware P5 is a software product that you can install pretty much anywhere, either directly on your storage servers, on Windows, on Linux, on Mac, on VM, wherever you want to put it, and comprises these three modules. So we have two modules which can deal with LTO. Those are backup, which is there for disaster recovery purposes, archive, which is there for migration for long-term or for structuring a project, as we're explaining today. And also we have a replication product, which can push data between different hosts over the IP network. So the focus today in our integration speak is about archive, but most media companies probably need some kind of archive, but not everybody's aware of the difference between backup and archive. So just to cover that off quickly in a minute, everybody needs a backup, which is a copy of your data. It allows you to recover your storage if you have a failure. So it's a disaster recovery tool, DR. And it runs every day, probably against all of the production storage, so that you have an up-to-date copy of everything on tape or in the cloud. And everybody needs at least two of these backups. So if you only have one, maybe you need another one to be entirely safe and secure. Archive, on the other hand, is a different proposition. Archive is where data is usually moved into the archive. In the case of the Hotel Hungaria case study, this could potentially be at the beginning after the high-res footage has been shot. We'll move it into an archive and then pull it back when we need it. It allows completed work to be taken offline at the end of a project's life cycle, and it runs as needed. So the customer is selecting the data that needs to be archived, or the media asset management system is providing a list of what needs to be archived. It's not like a backup. You back up everything. Archive is more selective. And most media and broadcast companies, they need a proper structured archive. So lots of smaller companies we talk to, they have the typical pile of USB hard drives that they bought for a few dollars from Amazon. And it's not a reliable storage over 10, 20 years. It's not actually a cheap storage compared to LTO. It's not that fast. It's difficult to obtain redundancy, and so on. So just pointing out that the ubiquitous pile of USB drives on a shelf where nobody knows where anything is what we're trying to get away from with Archiware P5 Archive. So typical simple archiving workflow might be where you've got stuff coming in from cameras. You're going to put that on some kind of RAID storage, maybe on set. With the addition of a P5 server that has access to that storage, you can stream that data onto LTO tape. LTO tape devices come in two flavors. You can either have a rack mount device, and these can scale right up from 25 tapes up to hundreds of tapes, all that available and online, or just a simple tabletop drive, which you can stick on top of your storage device on set and write the same LTO tapes with the same 12 to 18 terabyte per tape capacity that's currently available for a very low cost per terabyte. Or Archiware also supports cloud storage. So if you're in a situation where you have a fast upload to the internet, you have a gigabit or upwards wide area network, then you can consider using cloud storage. And in terms of the types of cloud storage and tape we support, down here we've got our public cloud support, which includes Amazon, Microsoft, Backblaze, Wasabi, and a whole host of other public cloud providers who will all happily charge you per terabyte per month for as much data as you want to throw at them, with different pricing tiers depending upon how quickly the data can be recovered and how high the recovery costs are. And then we also have our tape support, which, as mentioned, includes the big tape library devices and the smaller tabletop drives, and we support all LTO generations. We support LTFS, vendor neutral tapes, and we support writing in parallel across multiple drives. We also have disk up here, but really disk is not such an interesting archive format because you're trying to usually get away from disk storage when you're archiving to get those costs per terabytes down, which is what we're looking to do. So yeah, ingest with Archiware can be as simple camera ingest, and Limecraft can facilitate this and drive the Archiware software, and therefore drive the tape software, all from within the same process. And final slide on P5 is just to show you that P5 has its own web interface. So we were speaking earlier about each one of the pieces in this solution can stand on its own and operate independently, and that includes P5, which has its own way of tracking every file that you've ever archived to tape, has its own simple MAM interface where we can create thumbnails, playable proxies simply for identifying media files in the browser. We can capture metadata from the media files themselves, just like a regular MAM product. And this can all be searched up here. You can search any of the metadata, any of the metadata ingested from the files, file names, folder names, etc. So all of this stuff is always available within P5's archive web interface, as well as being accessible through integrations like Limecraft. So with that, we're going to move on to Olivier, who's going to talk about why and how Hotel Hungaria integrated the Limecraft MAM, the Scale Logic storage, and the Archiware P5 archive. So over to you.
Okay, thank you, David. So why did Hotel Hungaria integrate all these solutions? So at Hotel Hungaria, we have 5 different units who most of the time work together on the same project. So we have our marketing, short form, scripted, non-scripted, and post-production unit, which overall gives us a yearly average of around 100 projects, 850 shooting dates, 500 terabytes of new media every year. So in the years with our nature, it was a little bit more, and around 150 hours of finished product a year. So to manage all of these projects, if you can go to the next slide. So that's on a 5-year basis, there's around 500 managed projects and 800 named users. So all freelancers, clients, and production members who actually have access to all the projects they work on. So every user has his own set of projects. So next slide, indeed, is one of the projects is our nature. So it took us 3 years of production time. If you go to the next slide, then we have the overview. 3 years of production period from shoot till actually the editing process. It was 4 years till the finished product. Around 1,000 shooting days for that project, 80,000 clips, so searchability was important. 1,800 days of editing and 120 days of grading. So going to the next slide, I want to talk about the storage, the security behind it, the accessibility we have, and the sustainability we gained by using these techniques. So on the first slide for the storage, the original media that comes in, actually we use Limecraft ingest, the Limecraft ingest tool, that's Limecraft Edge, to make a copy and a transcode. So there's a first copy to the production server with a checksum, and this copy is automatically backed with Archiware to LTO. So that's actually our backup / archive. So it's actually disaster recovery from our production server. Once the files are copied with checksum are on the production server, the cloud connector of Limecraft will also make a second backup, but on a project level. So everything on Limecraft is stored on project levels. And the Limecraft ingest tool will also make an edit proxy to put on the video server using the cloud connector. So having all these different the original media and the proxy media available on the different servers allows us to, through cloud, up and download footage or edit proxies to do remote editing. And also the editing on-prem is secured through the edit proxies, but the remote editors can also download via Limecraft Pro, can download also the edit proxies to work remotely. So if we look at this next slide, you will see that at this point we have 2.3 petabytes in cold storage. So everything immediately on arrival at the facilities is backup / archived. So for us, it's more a double archive immediately instead of a backup for all the projects. And actually on our 450 terabytes of production server, we keep all the original media from the active projects. So in case of our nature, we had more terabytes than our production server could handle. So we moved everything to the LTO cold storage and retrieved it once we needed it again for the finishing of the project. Because shooting day one and having the image lock from the edit suite was 3 years in difference. So we put all that content on the cold storage, and then when we held the image lock, we retrieved actually all those images again from the cold storage and put them on the production server instead of keeping everything live on the production server. So, and as you can see, because we work with different edit proxy codecs, we have an even smaller video server where we can store all the original media in a lower edit proxy codec. Next slide, please. So as you can see on the left side, that's a typical user view. So every user has this specific login to a project and only sees the projects he has access to. Using then Active Directory, that same user will also be able, in a read-only environment, will be able to see the project folder on the Scale Logic on the production server. So for the users, it's human readable also on the server side. But what is nice is that on the next slide, you will see that our server backup and the backup that the Limecraft creates is that it's the same folder system that is there available for the tech and support team. So if we need to do a disaster recovery, we can do it through the server backup and put the tape back onto the server if there's a server issue. If we want to restore something from the Limecraft backup / archive, we can actually do that through the software. So on the next, it's the second slide I talked about. It's one more. One slide further, please. Yes, sorry for that. So a user can, inside of his project, ask for one shot or multiple shots from a collection or a complete project. He can ask to restore from archive. So he can retrieve all the images in original media. The user will always have access to the project and to the streaming proxy files. So we can always upfront see what material do I need, which selections do I have to make. We can also upload an AF or an XML file to the system, to Limecraft, and say, hey, these images used in this timeline, please retrieve them, restore them from the archive. So we will only bring back what is needed or used in the timeline. And if we can go one slide back, sorry for that. And then actually, to clean up the production server, we can actually purge the projects on Limecraft, on the online platform, where we can ask to purge the raw materials or the proxies or whatever we want. And Limecraft will then remove this footage from our production server. But after it does a double verification that he's sure that everything is also stored on the LTO using Archiware. So we are always sure that we have an Archiware database, we have a Limecraft database, and everything is searchable, humanly searchable in every level of the process. Okay, the security slide, that's 2 slides.
I like this warning. Have you thought long and hard about what you're about to do?
Well, we just go for it because we know everything is on double LTO. So that's the nice part, and everything is backed and archived at the beginning of the process, so that we don't have to do anything anymore in the end or wait for an actual backup. The only thing the system does is double verify is everything in order.
Yeah. So you have that peace of mind knowing that everything at the beginning of the project was safely stored on LTO.
Yeah, that's correct. So, and then on the security level of these tools, so we have 3 security levels. So actually, the first one is the 800 named users at this point all have to create an account using a 2-factor authentication. And the nice thing for us is when somebody of the company leaves, we can remove them from the platform, so automatically removed from all projects. Or actually, when somebody doesn't have an active role anymore in a project, on project base, we can also say, you don't need to be in this project anymore. So this project will disappear from the project list of that user. Then on the second level is project based for us, is when a project is finished, that actually you don't have any active members anymore. So we close a project and all the members in that project only get read-only access anymore. So they can't change anything anymore to the project. They can't delete anything, they can't add anything, but they can still look at files and download something, but that's it. And then what's for me as CTO, one of the most important things is how do you secure your server. So the nice thing is that our server, so the Scale Logic, the production server, has read access only for everybody. So a user through the Active Directory can also log in onto the server if we allow it, and only has read access only to the server. So for an editor, he has access to his project also in the backend of the server, but only in read access, so he can do nothing wrong. And then secondly, because we make a backup/archive in the beginning of the process on call storage, we are also very safe against external attacks, ransomware, because we will never lose our original media because it's immediately on a cold storage. So that's an extra safety feature that I love pretty much.
Always good for a CTO to be able to sleep at night is to have everything important offline, ideally on LTO, because then the ransomware has no access to it, even if there was an infection.
Yeah, that's correct. And then on the accessibility, it's so very important what Maarten explained. If you have 80,000 clips, then you need to have some searchability. So sometimes automated in transcription, sometimes also manual tagging. Like for example, the cameraman, they know what they shot on which date. They update it in an Excel file, and automatically we can input that information into Limecraft and make some tagging. And then what's nice then after the search or at creating of the selection in the next slide, what Maarten explained is that you can export this to, or it stays linked to the edit proxies who are on our video server. So in case of a director or an editor who's searching for an image in the search on Limecraft, can export an AF file using his search results and putting that on the next slide on a timeline where he has his selection he made in Limecraft or Avid, Premiere or Resolve. But what's nice about it is that what we see most of the time is that an editor is working on his edit station and directors are mostly all the time looking and searching in Limecraft to give extra input to the editor. And then last but not least on the accessibility side is the sharing possibilities. So of course, people who are inside the project can see all the media that's there, but an easy system to share files without them leaving actually your on-premise server. So you can share with a customer, you can share a link choosing he can download or only view, download only a proxy file or download also the original media. The thing is, you don't have to upload it to a third-party file transfer system. It all starts from your own on-premise storage. If the customer wants to download the original media, Limecraft through the cloud connector will make the gateway for the customer to download it from your local storage. And then last but not least, sustainability. Actually, yeah, the server capacity. We have 450 terabytes. When bigger projects come along, like our nature, we know we have the LTO to expand, so we don't need to buy in urgent a bigger server or upgrade our server capacity, so we can stay on the same server capacity. Includes also the electricity cost that stays the same. It's not fluctuant because LTO is cold storage, and we can just store it in a cabinet and it's done. It doesn't cost a penny anymore. And then last but not least is actually it's not something you can calculate immediately, but transportation cost because of the remote edit, the remote access, directors that work from home to make selections for the editors, or editors that download the edit proxy and edit at home. We have Line, who works all the time in London on our daily show, on a daily cooking show we do. And Ula, she's from Poland, and she travels between Poland and Belgium. And she always works remotely. She never comes to the office. So once you get the setup going and you have some good editors who implement the system correctly, then there's no need for them to travel anymore to the office. So that's my part of the presentation.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that. I think it's an interesting workflow in that I think most of our customers tend to do the archiving of the media at the end of the project in order to make space for the next project or just to stop the storage from filling up. So I think what's fascinating about this workflow is that you begin with the archive because there's just so much quantity of footage coming in, and then you can use your edit decision list from the NLE softwares to tell you which assets need to come back from tape for the final conform, if you like, for the final output. And yeah, so I think that's really interesting that you can use Limecraft to achieve that kind of a workflow. So just a couple of slides to let you know what the URLs are to find out more. Archiware is at archiware.com. You can download, you can get hold of a free 5 or 30-day trial evaluation key. We're really keen on end users working with resellers to get a proof of concept running on premise, either with tape or cloud storage, so that you can start to get an archive workflow running and see how it feels before you decide if that's something that you want to go through with. Limecraft are at limecraft.com. All of their resources, case studies, information about the product, you'll find there. So with that, how are we doing for time? We're doing really well for time. So I'm just going to come out of full screen now just to see what questions we might have from you guys. So those people that are attending, yes, cameras. If you're listening, then please let us know if this was interesting. Let us know what you think. If you'd like any further information from us right now, we're happy to give you that if you have any questions. So I'm just going to look on my other screen here at the GoToWebinar. So I'm going to read out the questions that we've got. Thank you, Matt, for the comment. Bob, how can we integrate within our existing infrastructure, especially with regard to storage? Do you want to answer that one, Maarten? Existing infrastructure, or I guess this is something that you did, Olivier, because did you already have your storage before you brought in the other modules?
Yeah, before this we had Isilon storage, so pretty expensive versus Scale Logic. And actually, we integrated the cloud connector to connect to the Isilon. So all the projects were also human readable, stored in folders. So adding Limecraft on top of it, just using Limecraft at this point, Limecraft started editing the project itself in a human readable folder structure. So actually, it was more adding the new projects inside of our old structure. So that's not that's possible to do. And then projects that were in production, those projects were the projects that we actually also moved to Limecraft to be able to use the tooling Limecraft could support, and to make sure that the running projects were correctly archived, backupped. So it's pretty easy to, and I always excuse myself to Maarten, but it's pretty easy to pull out Limecraft, still keep working, or even plug it in. It's quite easy with the cloud connector system that you can put on any server you please.
Yeah. And to the rest of the audience, it's Olivier mentioned Cloud Connector. It's a piece of software which is actually the key to the integration with the local infrastructure. So Limecraft is in the cloud. You want to use, as I mentioned earlier, local storage for performance reasons, or for cost, or for geopolitical, or whatever reason, and combine it with processes that are running in the cloud. Brilliant for co-production or multiple geographical locations. And that's possible through the installation of a Cloud Connector next to a piece of software. Cloud Connector is responsible for being aware of new files and communicating with what happens in the cloud, and vice versa. It's secure. It's much more reliable than putting a watch folder in between, and it's much less complex than commissioning custom development by connecting APIs.
And the obviously the tape infrastructure is going to be on-prem, so that connects through the cloud connector, so that you have a host on-premise that has SAS or fiber channel access to the tape hardware.
Yeah, and any variation in between. We've got customers on Nexus, Alto Disk Archive, plus a nearline storage, plus a tape, plus a secondary backup in the cloud. Sometimes there are 5 different storage technologies that have to be orchestrated, and I think that's the beauty for the end user. It's just completely transparent.
May I add one thing more that's pretty nice and unique, I think, is that your original media doesn't leave your premises. So it's not that the original media first has to go to the cloud to go back to the LTO. So it's all stays on-prem, and it's actually Limecraft through the cloud connector that organizes that from the project settings. So it's pretty neat that your own footage doesn't leave your premises.
Okay, so now we've got a question from Vikram, who says, what kind of production is this workflow best suited to? I guess he means by like wildlife production as we have here, or is it applicable more broadly?
It's more broadly. The design pattern which we've been discussing the last 43 minutes is, I would say, high volume / high quality. There is similar deployments for fictional producers, that particularly those that do continuous drama. So for feature film, 20, 30, 40 shooting days, it doesn't really make a difference. Single camera production, producing 1.5 or 2 hours per day, ending up with 40, 50 hours. But when you're in continuous drama, operating multiple multicam studios, you might shoot 4 or 5 hours per day, 220 days per year, and you end up with similar volumes. So this is very, very useful for such high volume operations.
Okay. Matt didn't just say that it looks good, he also had a question. So he says, looks very cool. Any good camera workflow system has 1, archive from camera offload, 2, archive of projects at the end, and 3, continuous backups of projects and media in progress. So I guess that's not a question so much as a statement. Is there anything that you want to say in response to that one?
I want to comment on that one. So that's completely true. So that's the continuous backups of projects. That's also something also with our remote editors. So Limecraft doesn't only hold our audio or video. They can hold PDF files, information, transcripts, Word documents, and also project files. So we always ask our editors, internally or externally, to actually also send their project. When they upload a video, they will also upload an XML or an AF connected to that video. So they can add that information to one video. And then on the other side, there's also Limecraft tools, which enable you to actually automatically push all the info that's in that watch folder, also send it actually to Limecraft, so it lands on your server on the right location, and in our case, in a read-only environment. So Matt is right, and we do all those things automatically.
You do all of those things. So well done, Matt. You're correct. Okay, just looking at the next question. No, I've already read that one, so I just need to flick down. Okay, so this one says, Maarten, addressing you. Looking ahead, isn't this a solution to a temporary problem? Will cloud technology not become more flexible? Question mark. So,
and then flexible, probably meaning capable of swallowing larger volumes. We once thought the original plan was to ask producers to forklift all their high-res footage in the cloud, but frankly, it's almost like file formats grow bigger faster than network internet capacity is growing. We've just onboarded since January 2 customers that are shooting music events in 8K formats, and not just doubling, but putting another multiplier on the file sizes. We may or may not expect more 3D type of images, field depth recordings. I don't see file formats becoming smaller. So I think a good combination of local storage optimized for performance and collaboration in the cloud is there to stay for a few more years.
And I think cloud storage costs, cloud object storage costs have been static for quite a long time, but with the cost of energy rising, it's likely that they're going to go up. LTO tape capacities go up, and the cost per terabyte slowly goes down. Not something that you get again with disks. And disk arrays take a lot of cooling and power, which is expensive. So the fact that tapes are offline, not consuming power, whilst the tape is sitting there holding 12 to 18 terabytes worth of media footage, is a big difference in cost, especially as you're talking about 1.5 petabytes. And putting 1.5 petabytes in a cloud and then paying for it and uploading it is a big is not something to be overlooked. Not something that you should think is straightforward.
And the big cloud issue, is the download, because uploading is not really the issue. It's always when you download, they charge extra if you need it fast. So getting the speed of recovery from an LTO tape is always faster, and even if you pay maximum, it's still faster than what you can receive from the web.
And you always have to pay those download costs. And I think if you're planning on putting stuff in the cloud as more of an insurance policy, so it's just another copy of something, it's an insurance policy, you're not expecting to download it. It's different. This kind of workflow, you are expecting to download a certain amount of this footage, so you don't want to be paying for it on a gigabyte basis. Okay, well, it's 10 minutes to the hour, so I think we've filled our 45 minutes. There's no more questions I can see there at the moment. So all those that attended, thanks very much. Thanks, Maarten, and thanks, Olivier, for being here. I think this makes a really good resource about what's possible with these products. So we have a nice video here that we'll share with you all. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next webinar. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks, all of you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye. Thank you.